Well, thank you for everybody who's here. Maybe some people have skipped out because of the beautiful weather, and who knew that we had so many football fans, and they're catching the homecoming game. Well, it's great seeing everybody here. I'm Luke Rodehorst. I graduated from the college in 2009. Currently, I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I work for Google and their elections and issue advocacy team. In my volunteer capacity, I'm volunteer on the Alumni Club of Ann Arbor, Detroit, starting to get more involved with the Chicago affinity groups. And then, most importantly, also class counsel, which it's glad to see so many interested people in learning more about that here. And if we could just go down the line here, Jill, Maura, and Joe, if you could introduce all yourselves too.
Hello. Hello?
Oh, it's on. It's just not projecting through the
Oh, perfect. Okay. My name is Jill DeArmond. I'm the class of '93, and also I went to Booth in class of '09. I live in Chicago. I work in the finance industry with Goldman Sachs, and my volunteer capacity, I'm on the Booth Alumni Club and also the class council for '93. So I've been on that for about 2 years now.
Hi, I'm Maura. I live in Chicago. For 5 years after graduation, I worked in the publishing industry, and I'm now currently a full-time student at Booth. I graduated in 2005. I served on our first-year reunion committee, and then for a couple years, our class didn't really have any volunteer activities, and then luckily they started the class council program around our third year or fourth year reunion. So I've been on the class council since then, and I'm currently co-chair of the 2005 class council.
My name is Joe Griffith. I'm an alumnus of the class of 2003 in the college. I initially became involved in the following year, became the class correspondent, which I still do for our class for the UChicago magazine. Additionally, I am part of our class council, which began, I believe, in 2007, 2008. And I also work with the Participate Chicago annual campaign, too. So it's a lot of fun. And then in my spare time, I professionally am an online media strategist for a telemedicine company in Evanston.
Great. Thank you, everybody. To kick things off, I'd just like to hear a little bit from each of you about what you do in class council and, you know, what's it like there. And Maura, maybe if you can start and give us a little sense of what it's like from the young alumni perspective.
Sure. I think our main focus during reunion years is to try to raise money among our class and then also try and get a large amount of participation to the reunion events. We also help the alumni office plan the reunion events. So we, a few years ago, we actually looked at 5 or 6 different places where we might be having our Friday night gathering. So that's a lot of fun. Last year, our class council actually started a new initiative, which was the 6th through 9th year reunions, which was trying to come up with a Friday night activity for people who were attending Alumni Weekend but who weren't in a 5th or 10th reunion year. So there's a lot of different things that the class council does. In non-reunion years, like I said, you can plan a reunion event. Also working with the participation amounts to try and raise specific amounts of money. This year, we're really excited because we're trying to raise 40% participation throughout the university, and so our class council is gonna try and help our class participate in that. And I think that's like the main things that we do. A couple years ago, we were trying to increase the amount of students in our class that we had addresses and telephone numbers and contact info for. So I sort of led this campaign to find contact info for what we call lost classmates. So that's also a really helpful thing to do because, of course, like at a young age, people are moving around a lot, so you lose track of them. So that's another type of thing that you could get involved in.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more from the young alumni perspective, it's you know, very similar to what Maura was talking about, but basically in terms of the commitment, we get together for calls as a group every now and then, which are the university helps us organize, and one of the co-chairs, Remy, is here, does a great job of leading things up. But yeah, so we get together and have these phone calls every now and then where we discuss what our goals are, what various opportunities are, how things are going in terms of our outreach. And what the outreach entails is making, assigning specific names of people in our class who we're going to make phone calls to. So reaching out to classmates when it comes to, making a gift or coming to alumni weekend, or if there's a more informal gathering that's happening, to try to spread the word there. Also, what Maura was saying too, it's a little bit of housekeeping too, trying to track people down and figure out where people are, if all that contact information is up to date. And then the other big push this year too is the externships, which I'm sure you've heard a little bit about throughout Volunteer Caucus today too, but trying to find these opportunities for current students to come shadow your job for a week. So it's again, focusing really on participation and engagement, and that could mean more obviously than just giving a gift. But yeah, Jill, it'd be great to hear some more specifics from you too.
Sure. For the class of '93, for the class council, I think it's pretty unique. What we decided to do, and it's really had a very excellent result as far as we've adopted the class of 2013, and what that means is we hold events with them, we help them get internships, externships. We've hosted dinners with them to try to build this relationship. And the stuff that I've been personally involved with is like pizza parties, organizing internships, and just talking with the class. I find that I feel like it's making an impact. I can tell that the people that I interact with, the main concern with them is obviously the economy, the employment situation, the debt they're carrying. So they're looking to get the most experience they can, kind of jumpstart that when they hit the workforce. And the nice thing about being the class of '93 is that some of us are further along in our careers, that we can set some of these opportunities up. We can have somebody come in and shadow us for the week of their spring break. It's a non-paid thing, but they get a chance to be in work with consulting, work in finance, work in healthcare, anything like that, where our class has been able to set up. That's one of the things, just pretty like interacting, having that resource there. I know when I was here, we had just binders of alums and contacts, but you're young and you really don't know any better. And this is kind of having the university facilitate this interaction has really, I feel, helped out. I know people from the class have reached out to me personally just to ask, my opinions on things and that, and hopefully I've given them, positive feedback and given them, valuable insight. So that has been, I find that's been a great thing, is helping that class. And with that as well is we've been able to engage others from our class, because there's a cause, there's a goal that we have in mind. People are, we're finding we're getting people involved because of that, so.
Yeah, so that's a little bit more background on class counsel. The other thing we want to, get out there and talk more about is class correspondent. So Joe, if you could, let's have your perspective.
Sure. The class correspondent program is a program that's been around, I believe, for the past few decades prior to the class council. And basically one individual from every class collects news items. You'll find at the end of a UChicago magazine, you're going to see news updates, and then at the bottom of that, you will see if you would like to add any news or you have any questions about the news that you've seen, you can contact this person. I initially got the job from a friend of mine who was our class correspondent for our first year out of college, the 03-04 year, and he just got too busy. I hadn't really considered even the idea of doing it. I didn't know what it was, but he said, hey, you should do this. You stay in touch with a lot of people. It'd be interesting. So I thought, okay. And 5, 6 years later, still doing it, definitely enjoying it. There are definitely months where news is sent in at a slower pace, sometimes the summer months, things like that. So the university's provided us a great resource where I believe twice a year we're allowed to news blast our class. So what we do is take all of the email addresses that they have on file and send out an email from me asking for news. And, I try to personalize it. I think that helps a lot if I say, okay, well, I hope you've all had a good year, or wasn't this last winter awful if you were in Chicago, that kind of thing. I never know exactly when the university is going to send out the news blast. I request one, but then I end up getting an email from myself a few days later, and then I know that the emails will start coming in, and actually that just happened in the last week, so we'll have a great article the next time it comes out.
Great. Yeah, really want to open things up to you and hear from you what you want to learn more about too. So if there are any questions or comments out there, we'd be happy to field them as best as possible.
I actually have one for Joe.
Sure.
When you're editing the notes that are coming in, what's the time commitment? And is there anything extra? Are there other departments that you work with to secure information aside from contacting the individuals in your class?
That's a good question. The time commitment it's kind of interesting. I would say that, you're going to be giving at least a few hours a month because it's your responsibility to edit the news as you see fit. You also do have to watch out. The university has several requirements. We're not allowed to post engagements or pregnancies. And sometimes you do have to deal with someone who's very excited about getting married and they don't understand why that news can't be posted. So working a little bit as a liaison between the university and your class, haven't had too many issues with that. In terms of connecting with other sort of university resources, as a member of the 2003 class council, it's been very interesting for me to watch the class correspondents kind of attach themselves to the new class council programs. And as we've learned, every class council is slightly different. Every council takes on different ideas for what they might want to do. And in our 2003 class council, we've decided to have an online newsletter that kind of goes a little bit deeper and perhaps provides more news about specific articles of interest that we see. If somebody's doing something completely out of the norm, maybe instead of a small news blurb in the UChicago magazine, we'd want to expand that out on our 2003 Facebook page. So that's been kind of one way that we're working. But you do have to remember, too, that the magazine is a separate entity from the class councils. So, for instance, when someone writes in with news for the magazine, you always have to email them and say, do you mind if we post this on our Facebook page for the class council, too? Because there are obviously internet privacy issues and things like that that aren't attached to the magazine. So, yeah.
I think you mentioned about 5 and 10 year and 15 year, and then the hiatus in between. How you guys actually in your class were able to at least create some continuity.
Yeah.
But my question is kind of a larger one in terms of the process. I get the 5-year increments; 'cause those are very stratified, and you have get-togethers and all. But is there an expectation of the council to be together on an ongoing basis, even between these years? And is there activities that are tied to that?
The class councils were formed to be entities that were formed throughout the years. So what I think the university discovered is that having just forming groups, committees of students every 5, 10, 15 years, like that was not a good way to provide continuity. So the class councils were actually formed because they wanted committees of students who worked continuously throughout the graduating years. So I think that that's one of the problems that class councils were designed to fix, because so our class is sort of interesting. We had a great first year reunion, and then second year, one of the girls on our first year reunion committee said, I really want to have a party second year. So we convinced our staff liaison to set up something at Goose Island, and we got together and we had a great time and it was fabulous. And then third year we didn't do anything. And I think we saw a couple things from that, which is A, you didn't know what your friends were doing as much, your college people that you might not talk to because they moved away. And then also B, we saw a huge drop in participation and giving rates. Because obviously if you're at a party at Goose Island, you're much more likely to write a check to the university than you are if you haven't been back in forever. So then our fourth year was really when we decided, I think in conjunction with maybe the class below us or class above us, to have a reunion party for the second, third, and fourth year reunion years. And then that's sort of what precipitated then the 6th through 9th thing that we did last year. And I think that it helps in a lot of ways. A, you keep in contact with people more, since you always have class council members reaching out to all of the classmates every year. People are much more likely to remember the university. And I think it actually makes reunion years a lot easier. is what I found when we were doing our 5th year reunion. It was a lot easier because we had updated addresses. We knew each other on the committee. We were a lot more willing to like talk about our actual feelings about what 5th year reunion should be, like what sort of place we wanted to have it at. So I found it's been super helpful.
Are the members of the council here in Chicago, or are they located all over the country?
They're everywhere. So, you know, the university does help facilitate the calls. So, you know, it's sort of Chicago-centric in that, you know, we're working with the university that way. But, you know, Remy was in Louisiana last year. I was in Michigan. We had people from Chicago, but all over the place. And that's also a great way to stay connected with everybody. You know, since you're not together geographically, but you do have these calls, you do have these goals that you're working towards as a group, and then a party at the end of it to look forward to. Yeah, that it's really fun that way.
Yeah, I think one year we even had someone from Europe or something who had joined the calls at bizarre times.
So those international people.
Yeah.
And the international students do a really great job of connecting people that we'd otherwise let fall through the cracks because we just don't have the resources necessarily to stay on the same page as them. So it's a really good opportunity to use people who are scattered everywhere to get them involved.
I'd say, too, one great thing that the university does is really allow the councils to kind of create their own events. In a sense, one of our co-chairs is actually located in the Bay Area, and several of our other class council members are based there as well. So we've actually ended up doing more kind of class council parties and things that have gotten the entire class of 2003 involved in the last few months in the Bay Area than in Chicago. So you never know where it'll come up. And the university's great at anything that you want to do in terms of getting people excited. They're always supportive.
Good question.
From the back of the room, we said, wow, what a change. You've had to fight every step of the way. I'm glad it's changed.
It's interesting you bring that up. I graduated in '93, and then I went back to Booth. And so my engagement as an alum in between that time really wasn't that much. You know, I find that, like you said, that the university wasn't as eager to help you facilitate that. It was, at times, to be honest, an obstacle. And that has changed so much. I mean, that was part of my reason for going to Booth. And also, I can't get over, even for '93, just adopting this class, putting together events, getting people on board. It's a different mindset, completely.
Any other questions or comments?
Is that an idea that's gonna continue with forwards, like 94 would adopt 14?
It may. I'm not sure exactly how that idea came about. I know why it was the idea was that we were going to have our 20th reunion in 2013. So they wanted an idea, one, to get the most participation back to the university for that 20th reunion, and then also, wouldn't it be nice to have a relationship with actually the graduates that are, the new graduates that are graduating. So that was the idea behind it. So, I mean, I hope it catches on. I feel like we're adding value. And, we encourage the class of 2013, we appreciate their candor because if something's not working, we can change it. And they seem to really enjoy it, actually, so.
I just graduated in 11, so in June, and so the concept of that, if 91 had adopted us, that would be awesome.
Right.
You're like missing all of that experience. And yes, there are opportunities with CAPS and stuff.
Right.
But you have to do like that extra step, and then CAPS has to reach out and try to find this mysterious person. But if a class was like adopted, that mysterious person would be more easily available because they would have volunteered their time ahead of time and said, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm available to any person who's looking at the healthcare professional. Here, I'm a lawyer, I'm available to this. I'm a teacher, I do, So I think that concept would be really cool. And then if I was class of 14 and my friends had this experience with 13, I'd be upset that I wasn't given those opportunities that my friends in 13 were. So I think, I'm just saying, that's a cool concept, and I think it should
continue.
Further.
One of the good things about the class council structure, as the university has done it, is that they let each council sort of form its own identity. So if you have a super active class council, then doing something like this would be great, but maybe forcing this on a class council where, everyone's at that age where they're all having babies or whatever it is, which is a real thing. This is an actual problem that the university has to deal with. is that it's great because that means that you can do what your class counsel wants to do at that stage in your careers or in your lives. But it can also mean like this sort of like lack of consistency. So I think that that's like a positive and a negative thing. But you should totally get really involved in your class council and then maybe adopt the class 10 years below you when the time comes. Because I also think this is a really great idea.
Well, I mean, the big, like you said, you're a recent graduate. If you would adopt a new class, you know, you're more limited now than you are going to be from 10 years ago.
Right.
From now, you're going to be stellar, you know.
I know
So.
I have friends who have no job, so like.
That won't be very helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So that's why the 20 years out or 50
Right.
Right.
And I think also too that we were an older cohort. So it's like, what, you know, we're from 93, what can we do, what value can we provide? And that was what we looked at and said, okay, you know what, a lot of us have gotten on in our careers. And the nice thing with the class council, I will say this, is that it's, at least ours is set up that, you know, we know that everyone with their work and their family commitments, how much can you give? So if you're like, hey, I don't really have a lot of time this year, I'm on a big project, you know, you might be reading MedCap applications. There's something you can still do to serve the council. Or, hey, you know what, I have a weekend free, let's have a dinner with 14, you know, have 14 Maroons over the house, we'll have a dinner and host that. You know, so the events you can do can also be tailored to, you know, the time you have available. So.
And one thing you could do also as a class council is reach out to the class 20 years before you. So it's great if you can interact with the college, but it's also, I think, great to build connections among the different classes that are both alumni classes. So I think you graduated in 11, so if you could find, I don't know if there's a 91 council, but if there is, maybe you could, one of your class council projects could be to develop relationships with the class of 91.
So we have another question.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, this is why I love coming to caucus, is because we hear about what other people are doing. So, I mean, class council is a relatively new thing, so it's great hearing what class of 93 is doing. I'm class of 2000, and
Okay.
my brain is spinning already. Seeing how it works out with your class. But, you know, we had our 10-year last year, and I'm here because I'm like, okay, now we have a lull year. What
do
I
you
mean,
do?
am I going to sit around until the 15th, or what can I do? So
Yeah.
this is where I'm like, what have you guys done? You know, let us know, share your stories.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting too. Like you said, the class council program is fairly new. The class of 2007 is the first class that has had a class council structure in place since their first reunion, and it's become a really great thing. They're very independent. They know exactly the types of initiatives that work for them, and even in the summer, they're working independently, and they do a fantastic job. But not all of our years do have class councils right now. We're still building it. So like you said, what happens after 10th year reunion? I think it's a great opportunity to get a couple of the people who are involved and start something small, get a class council working. And for excuse me, for 91, I don't actually think we have a class council in place. But like you said, if you were to reach out to somebody who was in the 91 class, then that could spark a very organic way to get the class council started. And I think that's essentially what we're trying to do is, again, like you said, get these class councils to get started, but in a way that's suitable to specific class year and the decade that they came out of the university, and make sure that we're not pushing people in a specific direction that doesn't fit for them. So I think that this is a really good opportunity for some of these classes who don't have something in place to start small and hear some of the ideas to build up for future years.
Enthusiasm is infectious. So I think if you had reached out to 91, and you had that one person that's like, hey, yeah, that's a great idea, I'm sure it'll spread like wildfire. That folks were going to spread.
And I also know, like, there's certain class councils that are very active and some that aren't. And, you know, it's a relatively new program. So once this thing takes off, we can kind of share ideas across the board, see what works, okay, like have a best practices. It doesn't have to be rigid and you know, you could do what you want, but if you're just starting out and have no idea what direction to go, you know, you can kind of see, okay, this worked in the past for this age group, this was perfect. You know, I mean, I think it's a young program, but I think there's a lot of potential.
You have a question?
Yeah, so what is the process? This is more to the staff members. What's the process for forming a class council for a year that doesn't have one already?
At this point, contact somebody at the university. Our department, to be perfectly honest, is a bit short-staffed at this time, but if there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm, then we'd be able to assign somebody who could be a rough contact for you in the interim until we get more people on staff. and let them know kind of what you're thinking, what initiatives and activities you're interested in. And essentially all of our councils have started with just a couple people saying, hey, we want to do something between the reunion. So it's nothing formal, we don't have formal paperwork or procedure. Just make sure you contact somebody in the development department.
Yeah, so who here, just curious, who's in the audience here, who is a part of the class council? 2, great. So everybody who's not, we should talk with us after. It'd be great to get this up and running. That's another thing I like about caucus is, or the hope of caucus at least, we get together, we learn, and then we, like good Chicago students, we do it afterwards. But yeah, any other questions?
Just to add off of that too, I think, the whole point about enthusiasm being infectious, I've had conversations from others in the class of 2003 that didn't know the class council existed at Participate Chicago events. And then I started thinking, maybe a year and a half ago, I should really put news items in my column as the class correspondent, talking about what we're doing in the class council, especially with the Alumni magazine. I think there's a lot of people who maybe read the Alumni magazine who are not really engaged as alumni with the university, but want to be to a greater extent. So by putting class council news items, either saying, hey, we're the class of 91 and we want to start a class council, or our class council is doing this and this and this, come get involved, I think that it works. So don't hesitate to kind of cross-plan through the Participate Chicago, the class council, the class correspondent.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because we are in the process of reforming our class council, just trying to get some fresh blood in. We had a lot of the same people who were on the class council year after year, but then they would drift away, and so now we were sort of left with a small nugget of people. And we've been trying to figure out how do we get more people interested in the class council, even for a relatively young class like us, and who has had a class council for a while. And we tried reaching out to the list of the people that the university has as being on the senior class gift committee, which is, I don't know how far back the senior class gift went, but I think that there are a lot of years that did that. Yeah, so that is like a good way to look at people who might have been interested in this sort of activity way back in college. And reaching out on our class Facebook page is something else we're hoping to do. But I love the idea of putting it in the magazine, because I think you're right, everyone gets the magazine, right?
Everyone gets the magazine. I've gotten responses back from people saying, class council, what is that? And then I get to talk about that. So.
Yeah, or people skip right to the back to look.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that myself.
Right, and in theory, we weren't supposed to be doing that, right? Because we're the Facebook generation. Right. So in theory, we shouldn't care, but we also do it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's, thank you everybody for your questions and comments, and good luck with your class council pursuits.
Thank you.